morning, church. We are in the book of Genesis, chapter 39. The last time we taught this class, back in October, we were in chapter 22. So what I like to do is just kind of recap us from 22 to 39 within a few minutes, because we don't want to review. We want to go forward, but at the same time, we want to give a rough idea of where we're at right now. So the one theme of the whole Bible, in one word, I always say is Jesus. That's the one word answer. I mean, anybody else could have another word. I mean, I don't own that word, but really the theme is Jesus, because that takes us to salvation. It takes us from sin. It shows us love. So all those answers are correct, of course. So because of the beginning, and we know that from the very beginning, creation is explained, and then sin is in the world, and then more sins in the world, and more sins in the world, and finally, God's going to start cleaning things up. So he talks to Abraham, chapter 12, and he chooses Abraham, makes the promise of Abraham, giving him the land, his descendants, a nation, and then blessings to all people. And that would be Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, then all Jacob's children. The 12 would be the nation of Israel, because Jacob is Israel, and now we have the nation. And from there, the genealogy of Jesus Christ will come through that tribe of Judah. And we looked at that last week with Judah having Perez as the descendant that follows the line of the genealogy in Matthew chapter 1, verse 3. So as we look at chapter 22 into 39, there's a lot of dysfunction. There's a lot of human aspects of the way we live as humans, the way we behave, the things that are done. You find everything from lying and cheating and adultery and murder and mass killing and incest. I mean, everything's in there, taking us here to chapter 39. But the idea of chapter, I got a fortune I got the other day, and the reason I kept it because it works with my lesson for soon to come. So I'm not going to read that yet until the time comes. But what's happening is that the genealogy of Jesus is explained in these books. The understanding of how we're going to be saved. That's why I say from the very beginning to the very end, it's Jesus. One word. So the last chapter, chapter 38, it seems to be inserted right in after 39, because after 39, this is when the brothers couldn't stand the little brother, Joseph, and they beat him up, threw him in the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites or the Medians. They were called the same, they're equal. And then we get into chapter 38, and it changes. The story just kind of sits in there, and we find Judah and Tamar. And the reason for that is to point again to Jesus. So even though it looks like, it's like, how come it's out of pocket? Because when we start with chapter 39, the story actually seems like chapter 38 didn't really belong there. It fits right through. But this story has to be there in chapter 38 because we have to know about the genealogy of Jesus. Everything points to Jesus. So that's why that was there. Is there any comments or questions before we begin our chapter in chapter 39? Anybody? No? Okay, that's good. For whatever reason, Joseph was real correct with God. When we look at him in chapter 37, he was a young 17-year-old kid. He was reporting to his dad, telling on his brothers. And when we look at it, we could tell that there was dysfunction in the family, because out of all the sons, he's going to love Joseph the most. He's going to love Joseph, and everybody knows it. And it created a little bit of jealousy and even hate from the other brothers. So Joseph, when we look at him at 17 years old, and he's over there telling on his brothers, giving bad report on his brother, it really looks like he's a little bit of a snitch, a rat. I mean, that's how people look at it. That's how people look at it. But you know, in a certain way, how come he's still so right with God? Because maybe in the bigger picture, because a lot of times we don't see the whole big picture of things. We see what we see. But the bigger picture is maybe he was supposed to do that because his father conditioned him to do that. Remember that spoiling part? None of that's correct. God uses everything to make things right. Romans chapter 8, verse 28. No matter what happens and goes wrong, God makes it so that it takes us to the direction we need to go. That's really the way it works. So here, Joseph now, in chapter 39, continues from 37, where his brothers beat him up, threw him in the pit, told the dad that he's dead, that some animal, some beast got to him, and he's dead. So the father, Jacob, all this time and going forward for a while, is in his mind thinking that his son is dead. Okay? The brothers conspired at first to kill him, and they decided to sell him instead. So they got a little bit of money out of the deal, which is part of. They couldn't kill Joseph because the story of God protected him. And we see that even in chapter 39. We'll see over and over again, it will say, and the Lord was with him. The Lord was with him. So that means for whatever he does, right or wrong, God was with him. And obviously, all the things that he was doing were pleasing God and the people around him. Because the people that are around him are blessed because of him. Sometimes we don't recognize that type of thing. We could see it when we understand it more clearly, like a congregation is more blessed because we have this or we have that. We know that. Job places, we have a good boss. Place is blessed because you have this great leader. In every situation, it makes a difference how we live, how we behave, and people are watching us. Here, Joseph, remember, he hit rock bottom. 1 minute he's the favorite of the dad, right? He's walking around in a colorful coat, and nobody likes him, but dad likes him, so he's on top of the world in his dad's eyes. His brothers beat him up, threw him in the pit. Now he's a slave. He's a slave. He's sold to Potiphar, and now he's on the bottom of the rung. His life just went from real good to rock bottom. But God is with him, so his life gets better. As we study and continue to go through this chapter, we'll see that things keep getting better and then worse with Joseph. Okay? In comments. Let's hit the first few verses. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him from the Ishmaelites, who had taken him down there. The Lord was with Joseph. Here we see that right away. The Lord was with Joseph. And he was a successful man. Remember, he's a prisoner, he's a slave, and he's a successful man. Man is on rock bottom. Most people would be crying. Most people would be complaining. Most people would say, "Oh, it's me." He does what he does. He is what he is, and he's successful because God is with him. The Lord is with him. Okay? And he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian, and his master saw that the Lord was with him, and the Lord had made him, that the Lord made all he did to prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight and served him. Then he made him overserve his house and all that he had and put under his authority. So it was from that time he had made him overserve his house and all that he had, and the Lord blessed the Egyptian house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field. Thus he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, old. We know that the next couple of chapters takes us into a time frame where he faces Pharaoh. He's 30 years old when he faces Pharaoh. So there's a 13-year period from chapter 39, 40, and 41 going into that space. We've got to recognize that. Now we know there's a 2-year period as we go forward later when he talks about his dream. That's why I have a little fortune cookie thing here about the dreams, that there's a 2-year period there. But even before that 2-year period where he interpreted the dreams, there was a little bit of time frame there that we don't know exactly what it was. We know that the time frame between 17 and 30 was 13 years, so he was probably at Potiphar's house for at least a chunk of that. So when we read this chapter, it wasn't some 17-year-old kid got thrown into the house and Potiphar's wife started liking him. Because as we read this time frame here, we don't know exactly what it is, but we know it's in between 13 years of all these things that are going to happen in this day. Any comments? Potiphar was a officer for the Pharaoh, and it's been said, I don't understand exactly how these Bible scholars and commentators come up with this, but it's been said, and I just want to bring that up, that he was possibly a eunuch. Because he's an officer. Sometimes in the past, and the reason is the history of how these officers were is that sometimes they don't want the pharaohs, kings, don't want the guys or officers under them to have seed, have children, because they don't want to be overtaken. That doesn't say in the scriptures, but that's one of the actual cultural things that were happening in that time. And that could possibly be why Potiphar's wife was hitting on Joseph. But that's just some of the commentators that talk about this particular chapter. Any comments? We were talking about that last week too, Brian, right? That a lot of times, a lot of people were made eunuchs for that reason.
I'm sorry, were made what?
Eunuchs. Yeah. So he could have been. That's all we're saying. From some of the Bible commentators and some of the discussions that have gone on. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that's something to think about. Okay? So the Lord was with Joseph. We see that over and over. Everything he did, he prospered. So again, there's time involved. I can't look at the new guy that just got hired and all of a sudden, wow, he's so good. Wow, let's put him in charge. It doesn't work like that. So you know there's probably a few years that has happened as he's being looked at, recognized, and promoted. Again, we don't have the time frame on that, but it's obvious that nobody that gets hired today becomes the boss tomorrow. It just doesn't work like that. So there's a time frame that's happening here, so that Potiphar could see that he was a blessing to him. Because you notice this is that everything prospered in his house and in his field. So Potiphar saw that because of Joseph, things got better. And sometimes we got to look at it like that. When we have Christians, we as Christians, when we're around the world, when we're in our jobs, when we're in neighborhoods, in our families, we are the leaven. We are the ones that's going to show people godliness. And this is what Joseph did. And people saw. They were converted, but they saw. And sometimes that's all we can do, is show people what godliness looks like. It goes on to say that he didn't have to worry about anything. And verse number 6 is a little bit, verse number 6, there's two concepts in verse number 6 that some of the Bible scholars used in this particular idea. Let's read that. Thus he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he did not know what he had except for the bread that he ate. Now, this could sound like sin against God. He's sinning against God. So his morality is that even in his rebuttal to the wife, Potiphar's wife, it's not like, hey, look, I don't want the boss mad at me. He didn't go into Potiphar. He didn't worry about Potiphar doing something to him. He don't want to sin against God. You notice that? So verse number 10 says, so it was as she spoke to Joseph day by day, and he did not heed her to lie with her or to be with her. So as the time goes on, continually, she wanted to be with him. Now, he's in a position where he's got everything already. Basically, he's got everything in the house. He went from daddy's little favorite son to the ditch to slavery. And when he showed up in Egypt, he probably came as a slave in shackles even. Because that's how they used to transport people most of the time. I mean, even though it's not said, we understand that. He went there as a slave. So he went down there, sold as a slave, went to the house, moved his way up. Now he's telling the wife, I'm in charge of everything. Everything. She continues to talk. You think about where he was at that time. He could have done almost anything. All three things that are talked about in 1 John chapter 2, verse 15 and 16, that in this world, there's three things. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eye, and the pride of life. He could have all those things, and he was God. He didn't want to sin against God. Notice that. He was correct. That's why he's being pointed out here in the last 25% of the book of Genesis. He's really one of the key guys. He is really important in the process of the actual transformation from the patriarchs into the law of 10 rounds back and forth. Nobody wins. You never, just leave. Just leave. Like that. You're right. That's another problem. You know, if we look at it, we're going to see a lot of things that are going to parallel, even going forward to Jesus, like in the next chapter. You know, there's the butler and the baker. One of them is saved, and one of them isn't. It's like the three on the cross. I mean, so there's a lot of things that you see that are in comparison in these chapters. Good comments. Thank you. That's right. Right. That's right. Right?
I don't know. One of the notes that I was still,
That God was with them, right?
you never heard that character because so isn't that an example of God being with someone else and then sending them those that God not being with someone that tears Bible sin.
Well, that's a whole different situation because they're in the garden, first of all. So technically, they're actually closer to God than anybody else, period. But you're right that if God is with us, and how do we get God to be with us? You know, we got to be with Him. We got to go to Him. We got to go to Him. And that's where the repentance comes in obeying the gospel. We need to repent and go to Him. We need to want to be with Him. And He'll be with us. Okay? Anybody else? Okay, we're at verse number, what, 16? No, no. We're at verse number 14. As she called, okay, she got the house, and she grabs him by the garment, and he fled outside. Now, this is where she's going to try to set him up. This is where the framing is. She's going to frame him. She's going to make herself look like a big guy here. He ran outside. As she called to the men of her house and spoke to them, saying, "See, he's brought," he's talking about Potiphar, has brought to us a Hebrew to mock us. And because he brought Joseph, he put Joseph in a higher position. That in this way, she's using the other men to start disliking him, saying he's here to mock us. And maybe some of the other men didn't even like the fact that he was in charge. It was real easy to not like the boss. Real easy to point at the person that's in charge and point, and everything that goes wrong is his fault. He's the leader. He's the boss. And even him being the overseer of the house, that could have been part of it. So she used that as well to get other men to not like him. And it goes on. And I cried out with a loud voice, and it happened when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, and he left his garment with me and fled and went outside. So now she's accusing him of rape. Right? He didn't actually rape her, but she's actually accusing him of he came in here and he tried to overtake me and make me do this. And I screamed, she says. I put out, and then he ran away. So this is the story she's telling everybody to build her story. She's saying that he's trying to actually try to rape her. And this is how it's going now because he wouldn't do what was right. And remember, he says he's not going to sin against God. Okay? Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead, Ryan. 22. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever they did there, it was his doing. So again, the prison guy that's in charge, the warden,